Hello everyone, I'm Wang Jiaqi. My group members are Zhang Fan, Su Sichao, Sun Ting, and Zhao Xuan. Our group is going to talk about the Gestalt psychology theory. We are going to talk about it in three parts: a brief introduction to Gestalt psychology, the basic principles of Gestalt psychology, and its uses. First, let's look at the basic principles of Gestalt psychology, which is a school of psychology proposed by German psychologists in the early 20th century that focuses on people's perception, cognition, and thinking processes. The word Gestalt comes from the German word for shape, structure, or whole. The core concept of Gestalt psychology is to emphasize that people integrate perceived information into an organic whole rather than simply viewing it as separate parts. It puts forward a slogan: the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That is, the whole is not equal to the sum of its parts, and the whole exists before the parts. In other words, the first preset the overall image of things in our brains, and then verify it with the actual visual perception. Among them, the principles of perceptual organization have been studied in depth in Gestalt psychology. Psychologists have summarized a set of principles and rules. Let's learn about it. The first is the principle of proximity, which means that objects that are close in space and time are easily perceived as a whole. When we look at the first picture, since the distance between the two cycles is closer, we usually see three groups of cycles first, instead of six independent small cycles. One thing to note here is that proximity, as the primary principle of Gestalt, has a very large impact, so large that it can offset other principles. For example, if you add color to the cycle in the picture above or even change its shape, people also treat nearby objects as a whole. This principle is widely used in daily visual design, such as the app list page we often use. When designing, designers will consciously group similar functions together to make it a whole, making the entire page structure clear and easier to understand.
Hi, I'm Zhao Xuan. Next is the principle of similarity. It refers to the tendency of people to group elements with similar characteristics. When perceiving them, similarity can be expressed in terms of color, shape, size, texture. For example, a set of red dots and a set of blue dots are placed together, and we naturally see them as two groups, rather than disposed individuals. Next is the principle of continuity. Refers to the tendency to organize visual elements in smooth, continuous paths rather than understanding them as interrupted or abrupt shapes. It is specificity by one is prioritize continuity, and two is fill in the gaps, and three is prioritize holistically.
I show the principles of closure and simplicity. The principle of closure states that people tend to perceive and fill in incomplete figures or information into a complete whole. For example, within a broken circle, people will naturally perceive it as a completed circle. The tendency stems from the brain's quest for wholeness and continuity. When a shape composed of dispersed lines, a segment is usually seen as a complete shape. For example, the spotted dog in the picture. The principle of simplicity suggests that humans tend to organize perceptual information in the simplest and most regular way. When presented with a set of intersecting lines, we usually interpret them as two straight lines intersecting rather than a complex right-down pattern.
Principle of common destiny. People often think that objects are moving in the same direction and more connected than those that are still or moving in different directions. This becomes our brain naturally see movements, patterns as sets of a shared purpose of link. For example, a flock of birds moving together in the sky is perceived as a single entity because their movements align in direction and velocity. At the same time, move elements will be visually identified as belonging to the same function or category. Principle of symmetry. The symmetry principle shows that people see symmetrical objects or arrangements as complete and unified. This is because symmetry feels organized, stable, and visually pleasing. Symmetry is not only beautiful, it's also about psychological satisfaction and comfort, such as butterfly, human face, and symmetry buildings.
Okay, thanks to my friend for the previous introduction. Now I will introduce the last basic principle. The principle is named of subject and background. It means when a small figure is overlapped on top of large figure, users tend to classify the small figure as a subject and the large color as a background, which is the subject and background principle in Gestalt. So it's such as the picture on the right. Okay, now that we understand the basic principle of the theory, we need to explore its practical applications. So about the first application is scientific design. For example, in the interface design of software, designers use the simplicity principle in Gestalt scientists to classify similar elements to make it easier for users to identify and understand the related functions, create an intuitive and creative interface, and improve users' understanding and participation in information. And the second application is work and study. Such as in his book Creative Thinking, Wendheimer applied the Gestalt principle to the creative thinking of humans. He believed that the reason why students have doubt when solving problems is that they do not consider the detailed aspect of the problem in relation to the overall context for the problem. And once they see the problem as a meaningful whole, they will have an implement and the problem will be solved. Okay, the last application is psychotherapy. It is a self-healing method for patients to be aware, experienced, and awake to their own diseases. The technique is to help the parties gain greater awareness, experience, and how to confront, resolve inconsistencies and polarizations, and break through the impasses that constitutes and obstacle to resolve unfinished matters. Okay. That's all for my third presentation, and I'm sorry I'm saying maybe the sounds a little strange. Thank you.